The Defend Our Democracy campaign was launched in Johannesburg. It was created in the wake of former President Jacob Zuma's defiance of a constitutional court order ordering him to appear before the state capture inquiry. As we mark Freedom Day, the campaign is calling on all South Africans to unite against any person who violates the Constitution. We are joined by Professor Farid Isak of the University of Johannesburg and Professor Thuli Madonsela of Stellenbosch University, where she is the Chair of Social Justice. Very good afternoon to you both. Thank you for coming on to the show. Professor Isak, I will start with you. Just a little bit of background, a few months since your organization was formed. Yes. What does it stand for and what are you hoping to achieve?
Well, Defend Our Democracy is it's a growing list of more than 12,000 individuals, over 70 organizations. There are leading South African veterans of the liberation struggle and other leading politicians and civil society and trade unions, ranging from Solidarity to COSATU, who are represented in this at the moment, a broad coalition of South Africans who are deeply concerned at not the violation so much of the Constitution, but the threats that are made to our democracy by the disrespect and the contempt that that a number of figures, including a past president of the country, are showing regarding the country's constitution. It is the only basis that holds our society together, that holds our new dispensation together, regardless of the inadequacy of the judiciary. And we say, regardless of the outcome of the case regarding the former president's refusal to appear in front of the Zondo Commission, whether it is this way or that way, the Constitution and the Constitutional Court is in some ways elevated above all of us and holds us together. There is no way that we will not damage our country seriously if we disregard the outcome of the Constitutional Court, regardless of what it is.
Professor Isak, you talk about the legal system, certainly, and its inadequacies. And I'd like to pose a question to Professor Madonsela. Obviously, you were heavily involved in the formation, the creation of a state capture. Now, the Concord is clearly ignored by former President Jacob Zuma. How does this make you feel?
And good afternoon, Hugo, and good afternoon, Prof. Issa. Well, my feelings don't matter really. What does matter, though, are our collective concerns as a nation, because without the rule of law, democracy cannot hold. And when democracy doesn't hold, things fall apart because it becomes the survival of the fittest.
So I didn't hear the last part of your contribution there, Professor. If I may ask you to just say it again.
When democracy doesn't hold, things fall apart because it becomes a place where it's the survival of the fittest. You know, you get crime, you will get bullying, you'll get all sorts of things, because everyone will just look at what does it take here for me not to be held accountable, and they'll do the same. Then we will have anarchy.
Was this a case of citizens taking matters into their own hands, certainly, and as far as Defend Our Democracy movement is concerned?
In this case, it's citizens taking matters into their own hands in galvanizing for the support of constitutional institutions. In other words, it's not citizens taking matters in their own hands in disobeying the law and doing as they please. I mean, people are saying former President Zuma and any other person must subject themselves to the institutions that have been created by our Constitution, even if you don't like those institutions, even if you don't like those people. Because if it's open for one person to say, I don't want to be held accountable by people I don't like or institutions I don't like, then it is open for everyone to do that. And then we have anarchy, and then democracy dies.
This question is for you both, actually, Professor Isaac. Where is the public in all of this? I think the public generally are the hardest hit. Obviously, those that aren't as privileged as certainly many of the people that are rallying together to put together organizations such as the Defend Our Democracy campaign.
Well, today in Cape Town, at the Grote Kerk in the city centre, we had a very large gathering of a number of people from different sectors, and these aren't kind of elite NGO types who live comfortably. There were rural organizations represented, there were trade unions represented, there were women's organizations, people who work on the grassroots inside townships, a number of. And so in some ways people see the effects of the destruction or the disdain for the law through corruption, and people are the victims of all of this. And so the defense of the Constitution is not a liberal, a middle class issue it is something that affects the poorest of the poor. When Eskom is not functioning because of corruption, when people don't have access to clean water because the municipalities were paid off to invest in certain banks illegally, ordinary people are at the brunt, face the brunt of this disdain for the country's laws, and now having to face the music, their refusal to face the music. And so it may be, I mean, something that at a constitutional or at a theoretical level, academics are more interested in it, but at a gut level, at a ground root, at the township level, our people are feeling it in terrible ways. And that is why there are some organizations today, grassroots organizations, who are celebrating Unfreedom Day, or mourning the death or the collapse of the dreams of our country that we had when the old apartheid flag came down. So it is very much a struggle to ensure that the resources of our land and our country doesn't get looted any further by people for their own economic enrichment.
Professor Madonsela, it's 27 years that we are commemorating. Some people, as Professor Isaac has said, calling for Unfreedom Day. What did you think have been some of the shortcomings of the last 27 years?
I think the key shortcomings have been the fact that some of the people have been left behind. People like myself and possibly Professor Isaac have enjoyed the low-lying fruits of democracy. Our lives are improved. Our children can go to university because if they can't get a bursary, we can pay. A lot of people are not free from hunger. They're not free from inequality, gross inequality. They have no schools close to their homes, no bridges, no libraries, no labs, no cell phone connectivity. All of these things that we need, particularly now in the midst of COVID. And COVID really underscored the gross inequalities that continue in our society. When everything went online, such as education, commerce, and governance, those who are left behind were further pushed behind, which has created a lot of anger. Already people were saying, we don't want democracy. We asked for freedom. We got democracy, but we're still not free from poverty. We're still not free to exploit our full potential as human beings. So those are some of the fault lines of our democracy. But still, today is better than yesterday, and it's not only government's fault. All of us should have played a role in making things better, and for the next 27 years, we'll have to double our efforts.
Thank you for that, Professor Isaac. Before we let you go, final thoughts on where do you see this movement going in the next few months?
Well, the one is the brink. that our country is standing on in the next week or two, depending on the outcome of the court and the willingness of everybody to adhere to the court's judgment. In the long run, it has become evident for us in the recent while that many of our leading politicians in the country do not understand the separation of powers. They do not understand the value of democracy for them or against them. And so the acceleration of people's understanding and commitment to the struggle to defend our democracy and against corruption, it is something that we will escalate and take on board civil society, the workers, and we appeal to political parties as well to sign up to our declaration, which is to be found at Defend Our Democracy at defendourdemocracy.co.za.
Professor Isak, thank you for your time. Professor Madonsela, thank you so much for speaking to us on this Freedom Day afternoon.